former Lebanese Prime Minister, now in Paris at President Macron's invitation. It follows his recent surprise resignation and speculation he'd been detained in Saudi Arabia.
His wife and eldest
On Friday,
son,
President Macron stressed he would welcome Hariri as the Lebanese leader.
To discuss the political crisis swirling around Hariri.
I guess you've been watching the news for the last couple of weeks and you've noticed that the Prime Minister of Lebanon has resigned. He was in Saudi Arabia and he suddenly, abruptly resigned. There's been a lot of anxiety amongst the international community and obviously the Lebanese community. So I thought I'd take this opportunity to just give you my insights into what's happened with the situation. I'm not the ultimate authority, but I guess through my experience over the last couple of decades or so, I have got some experience on what I think might be happening in Lebanon at the moment. So just a quick summary. The Prime Minister, Saad Hariri, was in Saudi Arabia a couple of weeks ago, and he unexpectedly resigned. He notified the President of Lebanon that he was resigning. Now, according to Lebanese government law, the Prime Minister can only resign officially if he comes and visits the President and hands in his resignation. So the Lebanese government were quite surprised by it. Parliamentarians, there's been news reports across Lebanon and across Europe and the world. He was in Paris over the weekend. We've had commentary from President Trump, the German president, and the British as well. Everyone's making some commentary. It's really significant because there is a concern that should instability return to Lebanon, is quite significant for the Middle East. Lebanon, as I've been trying to say, has been very calm, very peaceful, and as you saw in our Facebook post during our 1 month visit in August, September, it's quite an amazing place to visit and hardly any real concern for anyone, tourists or non-tourists, Lebanese and non-Lebanese. So the whole thing with this is it's a power game. We have a government that is basically split along power lines and political lines. There's a block in the government that supports Hezbollah, and that's the Party of God, who get support from Iran. And then there's another block that is predominantly supported by Saudi Arabia, and that block is Saad Hariri's block. Now, the Prime Minister, Hariri, sits in a block called the Cedar Revolution, and is made up of quite a few independent government parties. The President, Michel Aoun, he sits in a different block which is aligned with Hezbollah, and there's Christians and Muslims and quite a variety of different religious groups that are aligned in that block. So during my interviews in August, September, it was fascinating and very interesting to have those conversations with different political leaders who were those who were aligned with Hezbollah, those who were not aligned with Hezbollah. Very clear, distinct lines. Hezbollah was one of the main topics that I discussed with every different politician and different leaders, influencers that I got to speak to, in addition to the issue of corruption. So what I'm assessing from all of this is they assumed he was kidnapped, they assumed he was being held hostage against his will in Saudi Arabia. Now, I'm in two minds about this. I'm trying to understand the motivation of Saudi Arabia holding Saad Hariri. Considering Saad Hariri is a local, really, of Saudi Arabia. He was born there, he grew up there, he studied there, and he studied in France. So it's a second home to him. His family are from there. His father, Rafik Hariri, owned one of the biggest tech industrial firms there. I think there's also an oil firm and development firms. There's quite a large consolidation of wealth and strength by the Hariri family in Saudi Arabia. So he's got a lot of interest there. His brother is there running their main company. He's also the general manager of one of the biggest companies there. So he's got a lot of interest in Saudi Arabia. So I'm a bit confused as to why he would be kidnapped or considered to be kidnapped. He interestingly then left Saudi Arabia on the weekend and went to Paris to meet with the French President Macron. It was a reasonably, very, very warm meeting. The French president is now assuming a mediation role, apparently, to try and mediate between. We're wondering whether he's trying to mediate between Hariri and the Lebanese government, or Lebanon, Saudi Arabia, and Iran. Again, it's not quite clear. The triangle here that we're dealing with is the power bloc in the region. The powers in the region are Saudi Arabia and Iran. Saudi Arabia and Iran have historically played out their power games on the grounds of Beirut, and the Middle East has also used, other countries of the Middle East have also used Lebanon as their playground. They've attempted to undertake proxy wars using different groups within Lebanon, aligning with them, financing them, weaponizing them, arming them, and encouraging them to divide in order to play out their regional power battles. Historically, during Lebanon's 1975-year war, we saw the global powers, Soviet Union and America, playing out their Cold War on the streets of Beirut. So it's not unknown and not unfamiliar. Israel's played its fair share of, had its fair share of battles in Lebanon as well. Iraq, Libya, you name it, they have played a part in dividing the Lebanese groups and undertaking battles on the streets of Lebanon to fight out their own wars without impacting their own country. So I'm hoping that made some sense to you. But for me right now, what I see and what is actually being said by political leaders around the world, the warning coming across is people, in particular Saudi Arabia and Iran, need to stay out of domestic Lebanese politics and not interfere and let the Lebanese resolve the crisis or the situation within Lebanon for themselves. Do not interfere. Do not participate in any power moves, and allow Lebanon to resolve its own issues amongst itself. That was said by the American president. It has been said by the French president. And as I said, there have been a few other political leaders around the world who stepped up and voiced the same message. So right now we're waiting to see if Hariri will return to Lebanon. I honestly feel he will be returning to Lebanon. There's a couple of reasons why he's done this. If you look at history again, I'll just take you a little bit back. This is a really good tactic. He's resigned previously. His father resigned in 2004, maybe only 4 or 5 months prior to his assassination, and on February 14th, 2005, the late Hariri resigned because he was very frustrated with the influence of Syria and Syrian troops within Lebanon, and he voiced his dissatisfaction by resigning. He was trying to encourage the Lebanese leaders and Lebanese people to stand together in defiance against the influence of Syria in Lebanon, politically, economically. It had sort of ingrained itself in every level of Lebanese society. Sadly, Hariri died defending that position when he was assassinated, as I mentioned, on February 14th, 2005. But what came of that only 2 days later was the Cedar Revolution, led by his son, Saad Hariri, where he encouraged the whole of Lebanon and all political factions to unite to force the Syrians to withdraw from Lebanon. And remarkably, within 5 to 6 months, all Syrian troops were forced out of Lebanon. It was a triumph for all Lebanese who believed in the sovereignty, integrity and self-determination of Lebanon and the Lebanese national pride. Maybe this is Saad Hariri trying to say something to the broader community and invoke similar passions. And this time it's a message to Hezbollah to reduce its reliance on Iran and the influence of Iran in Lebanon. I am not going to take a position on this right now, but from what I've learnt, from what I've understood and from what I've heard, from the voices of international speakers on the issue of Iran and Hezbollah, Iran should never interfere in Lebanese politics. And Hezbollah, from what I hear and what I learn, do not wish Iran to ever interfere in Lebanese politics and do not stand by or want to align with Iran as a Muslim country on religious grounds. Yes, they are aligned because they're both Shia. They come from the religious line, the Shiite line of Islam. That is a common link. There is a common purpose. But according to the interviews I undertook and the conversations I had in Lebanon with Hezbollah followers, with Hezbollah officials, there is no determination by Hezbollah whatsoever to Islamicize Lebanon, to turn Lebanon into Iran, to follow Iran. And the words of the people and the words of those within the Hezbollah party were, should the Hezbollah, the leaders of Hezbollah, ever state vocally, openly, that they wanted Lebanon and the Lebanese to Islamicize and become like Iran, they would fight against Hezbollah, against this position, against unifying with Iran, because they are Lebanese, and Lebanese Shia are very different to Iranian Shia, to any other Shia in the world. They are very diversified, they are very sophisticated, they are very liberated. The women are very opinionated and cultured and very strong. I've tried to illustrate some of this through my posts, and I can only really tell you what I saw, and this is what I believe, what I heard from the people, what I witnessed. And I can only hope that this will be shared more eloquently and more clearly for you when I return to Lebanon in March and do far more interviews with people on that side of the line, from the Shia side, from the Sunni side. We'll be spending most of our next month of filming in Lebanon with those groups and trying to get deep into the understanding of what really divides them and also what unites them, but to show you that there is commonality and there is peace and there is, real agreements between the groups, not only Shia and Sunni, but all Lebanese in Lebanon. That's what we witnessed. That's what I want to show you. I don't want you to just be convinced by what you see on TV. That is the purpose of my documentary, is to go beyond the headlines and into the streets and amongst the people, so you get to choose and you get to see what's real and what the people are saying and make your own choices, make your own decisions, and then you can argue effectively or know with some knowledge how to judge what you see on TV or on YouTube or in the papers. Thank you for listening. I hope this has been beneficial to you. And if you want to post some comments, some questions, I'll be happy to answer any questions that you've got with as much integrity and unbiasedness as I can, as I do and try and do with everything that I produce and the stories that I tell. So I hope to speak to you again soon, but let me just say thank you for watching. Cheers.